Okay, so just to begin, this is my first time speaking in front of everybody, so if I say something that's not English and you understand what I'm saying, ignore it. If you don't understand, let me know and I'll repeat. So just to start, who has read the book of Esther? Awesome. That's more than me on the seminar expected, but we're going to go through the stories. It's actually one of my favorite stories. Okay, so to go over it, there's a couple of important characters. You have the king and the queen, and they reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. You also have Mordecai, who is Esther's cousin, and he took her in and raised her after her parents passed away. We don't really know Mordecai's role. We started without you. We don't really know Mordecai's role in the kingdom, but all we know is that he sat within the king's gate. And then you have a person named Haman, and he was set above all other princes, and he was the advisor of the king, so basically the prime minister. So those are the most important characters in the story. There are a lot of points or chapters I would like you guys to read, so make sure you have your phones ready. So the story of Esther begins with the queen who breaks the king's request. So the king is having a banquet and he asks the queen to come and show herself off to everybody because of how beautiful she was and how pretty she was to behold. So the queen was throwing her own banquet at the same exact time and she refused to come before the king. So when she refused to come before the king, he was furious and his anger burned within him. So because his anger burned within him, she was dethroned as the queen. And basically she was dethroned because all the advisors were saying, if the queen doesn't listen to the king, then all the women in the towns will rebel against their husbands and then they can do whatever they want. So basically he had to dethrone the queen in order to make an example that we should be obeying the king.
That's the right way to do it.
To be politically correct. So the queen is replaced. So it says, let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of the kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins, and let beauty preparations be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. So the king loved Esther. So basically there was a 12-month period where the women were prepared to meet the king. So out of all the women, Esther found grace and favor in the king's eyes, and then she was throned queen instead of Vashti. So I have a question for you guys. How do you imagine Esther? Okay, so how do you imagine Esther? So we said the queen was beautiful to behold, and the king wanted to parade her in front of everybody. So how do you imagine Esther to be?
Pretty.
Just pretty?
Beautiful.
Anyone else have any ideas? Intelligent. Okay. So she wasn't only pretty, she also had a great personality because she found favor in his eyes. What else? No? So, I could imagine her to be, you know yourself.
Scroll down. IT. Scroll down.
So, okay. So I would imagine her to be drop dead gorgeous. Prettier than all the other women, better than Miss Universe. Like, she has to be really pretty or drop dead gorgeous in order for her to even compare to the queen in the past, right? So that's just what I imagine.
That's what the Bible says. It's not only like you think.
Yeah.
The Bible says so.
Yeah. But who said these? But like, I just wanted to put it in pictures. You know?
Are you crazy?
Okay, alright, so now we're going to go through the story of Esther. So, Queen Vashti denies coming before the king, and she's dethroned. Esther has grace and favor in the king's eyes and becomes the queen. And Mordecai discovers the doorkeepers want to kill the king. So he tells Queen Esther, and the king has the doorkeepers killed. So if we can open Esther 2, verses 21 to 23. Who can read it for us?
In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made to the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on gallows. And it was written in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king.
Okay. So we said Mordecai discovers the doorkeepers and he tells Esther, and Esther tells the king on behalf of Mordecai. So she says, Mordecai found these two people, they plotted to kill you. However, Mordecai was not rewarded for this. It was just written in the Chronicles, but Mordecai wasn't rewarded. If we read further on, it says Haman was elevated to the highest position. So not only was Mordecai not rewarded, but Haman was elevated. Next. So now that Haman is elevated, he requires everyone to pay tribute to him and to bow down to him. So Mordecai obviously refuses to worship or pay homage to Haman. So now we need to read Esther 3, 8 to 13.
Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasuries. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, and the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. And then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and the decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all the people, to every province according to its script, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by couriers into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions.
So there's a couple important things here. So it says that the certain people were scattered and dispersed amongst other people. So the Jews were not all together. They were really scattered amongst everybody. So that's one really important thing. Then Haman hated the Jews so much that he wanted to pay 10,000 talents of silver to go and kill them. So he was willing to pay the king 10,000 talents of silver in order to kill the Jews. So that's how much he actually hated the Jews. And he wanted to annihilate all of them. So babies, mothers, anybody young, old, and he wanted to clear all their possessions. So it was literally a genocide that he wanted to call against the Jews. So that was something that's really important. So Mordecai knows about all of this, and the decree goes out. However, Queen Esther, because she's in the empire, does not hear about this. So all she hears is that Mordecai is in sackcloth and ashes and is mourning. So she sends out one of her servants to find out what is happening. So Esther 4, 10 to 17. Who has it?
Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king who has not been called, he has but one law: put all to death except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words. And Mordecai told him to answer Esther, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther told him to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise. And so I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther commanded him.
So before we said that all the Jews were dispersed or together? Dispersed. So then Esther requested that all the Jews come together to fast. So in this part, you see that community is really large, right? So she wanted everyone to come together to fast for a certain goal. And even her and her maidservants in the temple were going to fast as well. So when Mordecai told Esther about this at first, she kind of sounded like she was refusing, right? She was like telling him, if I go into the king's temple and the king didn't call me, I'm going to perish. But Mordecai kind of puts her in her place, and he tells her, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. Esther is a Jew, so if they're calling a genocide on all the Jews, don't think you're safe because you're in the temple. In the kingdom. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Basically, if you don't help us, somebody else will. So, yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. So maybe her role as being a queen or a princess in this time is to save her people. Maybe that was her purpose in her life. And basically Mordecai is bringing this to her attention. So the queen fasts, and all the Jews fast as well, and they approach the king and invite him to a banquet. So Esther 5:1-4. Sorry, there's a lot of reading, but I couldn't summarize this for you guys. Probably not.
Now it happened on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, facing the entrance of the house. So it was, when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, up to half the kingdom." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him."
So we see that the king, because he loves Esther and she has favor in his eyes, accepts her to come before him, even though he didn't call her. So that was one thing that she took a leap of faith and trusted God and took the courage in order to go and approach the king. So it came out in her favor, and he allowed her to come, and she throws a banquet. So Haman gets really excited that only him and the king are invited to this banquet. So he plots to kill Mordecai. Esther 5:12-14. Mike.
Moreover, Haman said, "Besides Queen Esther invited no one but me to come and the king to the banquet that she prepared. And tomorrow I am again invited by her along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet." And the thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made.
What is a gallows? Yeah, exactly. That's how you hang people. Huh?
It's a cross. It's a cross.
A what?
You got it.
A structure typically of two upright and a cross-piece
It's where they hang people.
Yeah.
for hanging of criminals.
Yeah.
It's a cross.
It's a cross.
Okay, whatever. So now you guys know what that is. So basically, Esther throws two banquets. The first banquet, she tells the king and Haman to come, and then the second banquet, she asks them for them to come as well. So at this point, Haman goes to the first banquet and then comes back, and he sees Mordecai still sitting at the gate. So he plans to kill Mordecai by building these gallows, right? So this is where the story gets interesting. We're going to read Esther 6.
That night the king could
Not a
not
cross.
sleep, so
It's not a
It's
cross.
not a cross.
Okay.
You were
It's
right.
not
It's not a cross. You're right.
No, she was right. You were wrong. Good job.
That night the king could not sleep. sleep. So one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. It was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on King A. Then the king said, "Well, honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this." And the king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that the king hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. The king's servant said to him, "Haman is there, standing in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king asked him, "What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" And Haman answered the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought with it, which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on the horseback through the city square and proclaim before him, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Hurry, take the robe and the horse as you have suggested, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who sits within the king's gate. Leave nothing undone of all that you have spoken." So Haman took the robe and the horse and arrayed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square and proclaimed before him, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Afterward Mordecai went back to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning with his head covered. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him." While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs came and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared.
So, what is one word you guys would describe Haman? Proud. Okay. That's a narcissistic. He thought that the king was trying to honor him, so he picked the best things that he would like to be honored with. And at the end of the day, the king wanted to honor Mordecai. So then he had to parade Mordecai around and tell everybody, "This is what will happen to you if the king delights in you." So I think that is the sweetest revenge, honestly, for someone who was so rude and so nasty to a person, to have to parade that person around and lift them up and be like, "This is what happens when the king loves you," and like say it with a smile, right? So also, what was really nice in this is that the king, it says in the beginning that the night the king could not sleep. So the king had insomnia and then realized that, hey, Mordecai saved my life in the beginning because two people were trying to kill me, and I never rewarded them. So we said all the way in the beginning that Mordecai saved his life, but Haman was rewarded instead. Like Haman was elevated and Mordecai got nothing. So it's nice to see that God at the end actually did reward Mordecai for his acts. Alright, so the next chapter is literally, okay? So after this, you guys will realize why this book is just really good. So who wants to read chapter 7?
So the king and Haman went into the feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king said to Esther, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor in your sight, O my king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish and my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction does not compare with the loss of the king." Then the king said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" And Esther said, "A foe and an enemy, the wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking and went into the palace garden, but Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king. And the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, as Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. And the king said, will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house? As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king, is standing at Haman's house 50 cubits high. And the king said, hang him on that. So they hanged Haman on the gallows and he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king.
So someone tell me what happened in this chapter. Someone summarize it. What would make a man furious? Huh? Yeah? When he messed with his girl, right? So the king was already furious that Haman was threatening the Queen Esther's life, right? So he's like, all right, I'm going to walk outside to just cool down, right? He comes back, and what does he see? Did you guys catch it?
He's on the couch.
He was on the couch. So it says, when the king returned from the palace garden to the place of the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, will he also assault the queen while I am in the house? So not only did he come at his wife, but he tried to assault her as well, right? So that made him even more furious. So he decided to hang him on the gallows that he had built for Mordecai. If this isn't God's revenge, I don't know what is, right? Like for him to walk in at the most perfect time. So that was where the drama starts.
IT.
Okay, so Haman is killed on the gallows he built for Mordecai. The decree that was originally sent out on the Jews for them to be killed and annihilated was reversed, and the Jews were actually saved. And it says that they killed those who wanted to harm. And Mordecai takes Haman's place and is elevated to the second. So, you want to mention the thing for the Jews?
Purim.
Yeah.
The day they decided to annihilate the Jewish people, they decided by something called the lot. So a lot is it's like a dice. They throw the dice and based on whatever it's kind of a lot. So they decided on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is called Adar, which is March. This feast was celebrated a couple of days ago. If you are in a Jewish atmosphere or Jewish friends, they had a holiday a couple of days ago called the Purim. This is in remembrance of the day that was supposed to be annihilated. And instead of being annihilated, if you continue the story, they killed, I think, 750,000 of the people who wanted to kill them. So that's the reverse of the drama that Marina is talking about, and this happened on the day of Purim. If you are interested in this, and if you have friends that are Jewish, it's nice to tell them that you are aware of the things. Go tell them Happy Purim. It already gone. It's like it was Wednesday, and there is a fast, by the way, before it. And they read the book of Esther, and part of the rites at home, and they fast before, and they go to the temple after that, or the synagogue, and they read the book of Esther. And every time, I was researching this this week. Every time they come to the name of Haman, they boo him. They do that.
So something interesting about the book of Esther is that God's name is not mentioned once in the book of Esther. So you'll never find God's name in the book. However, throughout the book, you can see it's something called the invisible hand of God. So you can see how God plays a role in all the events that occur without his name ever being mentioned. So, do you guys have any examples before I show you mine?
Do your thing.
You guys are not as excited about this book as I am.
I only know this because we discussed it last week. It's very similar, actually. The king at the time of Daniel, his co-workers or his cabinet went to the king and told him, like, he made a decree, whoever worships any god except for our gods, thrown into the lion's den. So Daniel goes into the lion's den, he prays, and God saves him from there. And
Yeah, same thing. Except for, anybody else have any answers? There's no goal.
Ashley has one.
Okay,
Pretty St. Ladies.
okay,
Yeah. That's it.
okay. Mike?
Yeah, I was gonna say like Ruth, how she like the unfortunate series of events in her life ultimately ended up leading her to create like the genealogy of Christ. And then you could also use like, I guess, Joseph, when he was sold and he ended up becoming like the most exalted of all the brothers.
Awesome. Does anyone see God's hand in any of the parts of this story?
How, like, in the beginning when Mordecai saved the king's life, it would have made more sense if he was rewarded immediately, but because he wasn't rewarded right away, like, the reward came at the right time, not only to honor Mordecai, but, like, to save his life and the whole people's life.
When the king held out his scepter to Esther, because it's so rare to happen, like if you go into the king without being summoned, you're automatically put to death, and like this is the only exception to the rule, and it happened.
So when the king had insomnia, like, we kind of just easily just slept through the night.
Yeah, 100%. So like he had to read the Chronicles, and the Chronicles were written about how Mordecai saved him, right? So that was also. Anyone else have any thoughts?
That she was accepted by the king without being summoned. She could have been killed because of that. Barbara said that.
So we have that the queen didn't obey the king and she was dethroned. So that made a way for Esther to become queen, right? So Esther could have just been beautiful, but if the queen wasn't dethroned, she wouldn't have been in that position. So that was also God's plan. We said Mordecai saves the king. The fact that all the Jews fast and pray and come together is also the work of God, because it shows us, like for us also as a community, when we tell each other pray for me, or we all come together and we fast together for a purpose, like when we do those 3-day fasts for a purpose or for God's will to be revealed to us, that's something that also shows the hand of God, because through that, Queen Esther had the courage to stand before the king, because at the beginning she was hesitant. She didn't want to stand before the king because she knew she would perish. But because everyone fasted and prayed together, she was able to get that courage and stand before the king. The fact that the king had insomnia, so we said that. The fact that Haman's lies were exposed and that he was found on the couch and like all this stuff, like no one had to say anything bad about him. His lies came to light and he was exposed in order for the king to realize what was really going on behind his back. And then the fact that Haman gets killed, even though he wanted the Jews to get killed. And the Jews are saved, and they actually kill those who wanted to kill them. So all those are examples of the invisible hand of God leading through the story, even though he wasn't actually mentioned in the story. So. Don't look. Okay. Since you guys already saw the lessons, but the lessons learned from Esther. So I thought of a couple that were really important. Right. So like we said, fasting and prayer, it brings clarity and hope for deliverance. So this was honestly an earthly situation. Like Esther was put in a position where if she goes before the king, she will perish. But if she doesn't go before the king, her people will perish, right? So in order to come together and to fast and pray was something really important to give a solution to a heavenly response to an earthly solution. So that was something that was really important for this, because we said like the Jews were dispersed and they came together. So I thought that was really great just for our community in general. When we ask people to pray for us or when we all do things together, it really does show the power of our faith and just the community in general. Anyone have any thoughts about this? And was God has a plan and a purpose for our lives. So that was really important just because of the story of Esther. So I thought that her gifts were her just being beautiful and had a great personality, right? So God took those talents or those gifts that He gave her in order to give favor for the king, her favor in the sight of the king, right? In order to put her in that position. So I think God has a plan and purpose for our lives. Also goes back to what Mordecai had told her. So Mordecai tells her, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and if you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether or not you have attained royalty for such a time as this. So not only did God have a plan for her and a plan for His people, but He also had a purpose for Esther. If she didn't want to be a part of God's will or a part of this plan, totally fine. God's not going to force you to be a part of His plan. But that doesn't mean the plan is going to stop. He will find someone that is ready, or someone that wants to participate, or someone who wants the blessing of being a part of His plan. Which goes on to our point of Esther's divine purpose came by accepting her responsibility to go to the king. Mordecai was clear when he said to Esther that she could be the one who saved the people or not. So God respects everyone's free will, but will not let suffering come to everyone just because one wills it. So just because Haman wanted to kill everybody, doesn't mean God was just going to allow that because that's his free will, because then that would infringe on everybody else's free will. So God let Haman make his plan and do whatever he wanted, but at the time of hurt for everybody else, He wasn't going to let that plan go through. Because what would have happened if Esther didn't speak up for the Jews? They all would have died, and then what? Where does our plan of salvation go from there? Nowhere, exactly. Because this was a genocide on the Jews, and Christ came from the Jews. So even though Esther is not directly in the lineage of the Jews, if she let this genocide happen, then not that God's plan would have stopped. I'm sure there would have been someone else that would have came and took her place, like Mordecai. I'm sure he wouldn't have let this gone through. But because she was able to play a role, she was able to save the Jews and save our salvation at the end of the day from being annihilated as well. So God will only use you if you want to be used. And I think that's really important because with the invisible hand of God, sometimes we don't realize what God is doing for us unless we look back. So some people will say it's a coincidence, or some people will say like, oh, this happened to me and it's just that it's the case. But if we really are in connection with Christ, that we'll see those things are happening for a reason, like that He is playing a role in everything in our lives.
Question. Do you think that Esther still would have stood up for the Jews if she wasn't a Jew herself? And she would have also died if she didn't you know what I'm saying? Fight for them. If her own life wasn't, how Mordecai says, don't think you'll be spared because you're also the Jew. If her own life wasn't at stake, would she still have stood up for them?
So I guess that goes back to her character. So if we're saying that she found grace in God's eyes and she was beautiful and had a great personality, then I feel like as that person, then she would. But that's part of her decision, right? I can't tell you that her life wasn't at stake.
When it comes to us and our choosing to participate in God's plan for us, do we participate if it doesn't, if we know it's going to affect us? If we think it's not, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think if she wasn't a Jew, God wouldn't have allowed her to become.
And God would find another way.
He would find another way because He took out Queen Vashti initially because she wasn't a Jew, and she wouldn't have served that purpose for the people.
Yani, I think part of the invisible hand of God is the switch between Queen Vashti and Queen Esther. And Queen Vashti wouldn't stand for the Jews because she's not one of them. So part of the invisible hand of God, and He did, and the king made this banquet, and Queen Vashti refused to get there, and then He brought Queen Esther in her place.
No, but for us in our own lives, you're not forced to participate in God's plan for you, but if you know what it is, but there's a way, if it wasn't directly going to impact you, like, the reason Esther participated was because it was gonna directly impact her life. So that was her choice. If her life wasn't at stake, would she have still gone through and done all these risks?
If she was not at risk, would she put herself in this risk?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, so would we if we knew that we had to do all these things to do God's will, would we have done that if we didn't know it was going to, if our own life was at stake, kind of, I don't know if I'm making sense. Never know.
Are you saying would we go out of our way for others if our life was at stake?
Kinda, yeah. Would we go out of our way if it wasn't gonna directly impact us? But even if this is God's will for us, so.
I mean, we're not, No, I was gonna say maybe it wouldn't have directly impacted her because of the fact that she's queen. So maybe when it actually came time for this decree to be actually implemented, the king would have decided not to spare her, but still go through with the rest of it. I don't know, but then I remember the verse where it was just Mordecai was don't think you should be spared. So I was never mind. But it's still it's not for all I know, maybe because it's very clear that he loved her so much, so it's possible that he would have spared her. So, but that's still a risk that she didn't know.
So just because the king loved her doesn't mean she was actually going to be spared, because when the king signed the decree through Haman, the decree said that all Jews will be killed. So the king cannot go back on his word, and that was actually something we didn't read, but basically in order to reverse that decree, they had to write a new decree that would be done on that same day to reverse that decree. So it had to literally be a whole new decree because the king cannot go back on his word. So she still would have, if she didn't, Mordecai was right, she really would have been killed as well because of her Jewish heritage. But I feel for us, I guess it goes back to that verse, if you know to do good and you don't do it, it's still counted. So I feel if I know that I'm supposed to be doing something right and I'm not doing it just because I know I'll be more stressed out or it'll affect me, or if I can't do something, I feel I'm still gonna be judged on that. Does that make sense? Just because I don't want to do it because it's gonna affect me doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I interpret it. I don't know, I just feel we can't be selfish, with our gifts and our talents, if we can help someone else and we're not gonna die because we're helping someone else, right? But if we can help someone else out, even at our own expense, then I feel that's a reward that we really deserve. Just a side note. Does anyone have any other lessons you think you can learn from the book of Esther? I really encourage everyone to read it on their own because it's such a really good book and it's really underrated in the Bible, but Esther's a really great book if you like drama and scandals and just some other lessons I thought we could learn from, but we're not going to review it. It's using your talents and gifts to benefit others. So her beauty and personality, I thought was a really great gift that she used. Obedience, friends and support system. For me, I saw that there was a huge difference between Esther's support system and the king's support system. So the king's support system really did destroy him and really did do things around him and kind of just used him as an image, but to get their own agendas across. Where Mordecai was a true support system for Esther and got her actually through the kingdom. So I felt that was an overarching theme. And then humility versus narcissism. So Haman versus Mordecai, really. You can really do a whole Bible study on Mordecai as well because he did a lot of work throughout Esther and was very diligent in his work and really did have faith in God. So I feel Mordecai could have been in his own little study as well.